up, and maybe we'll just give like a round of applause for join us. So why don't we just kick off, just brief introduction. What you're doing now, how you got gotten into sales. Also just share one interesting, unique thing that most people might not know about you.
Okay, so what I do, I focus on the mental side of performance. And I do it in two areas, sales and sports. And the reason why those two are connected is because of those two endeavors, you're talking about being measured, you're talking about performance, and you're really talking about winning and losing. And in sales, like sports, it's not a passive endeavor. So there's lots of sales training in the mechanics of sales, but no one's really translating all this great science to help sales professionals learn how to compartmentalize setbacks, create and maintain sales confidence, and thrive under pressure. So that's why I do what I do. Sales itself, I started in sales in 1986 as a straight commission salesperson. I didn't know what a draw meant. And I only knew after I finished my first year and I was in debt. Light bulb went on and I said, oh my God, I gotta sell stuff. And what I was selling were college rings, high school and college rings. That was my first job, where I had to go out and solicit and present and work with kids and then work with committees. And it taught me some great things about the world of selling. And I went to a school that was very famous for engineering. And usually the engineers leave and start off with a pretty good paycheck. And after my second year of sales, I was making more than the engineers. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And so from '86 for 25 years, I've done individual contributor, manager, director, VP, all the way up to complete overhead. And I love the discipline of sales. So something that people don't know about me, so I'm supposed to be the psychology guy. I have a master's in psychology, performance psychology. I've completed the positive psychology at UPenn. And I'm afraid of heights, and I haven't figured out how to crack the code.
Skydive. Skydive, yeah. Okay. So, we want to kick this thing off. Usually we just dive into questions and all that, but you had this really interesting exercise you want to kick things off with. So, want to just talk about what the exercise is and maybe get people going on that?
Yeah, so in front of you, does everybody have a sheet with numbers on it? Yep. Does everybody have something to write with? If you don't, please grab something to write with. You're going to need something to write on, something hard. You going to be okay, Joe? Here. So this exercise I use with athletes and I use with salespeople. So the sample size, let's conservatively say I've done this with 3,000 individuals. And the exercise is this. I'm going to ask you to connect 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, as high as you can go in straight lines, right? 1 to 2, you got to find it in a straight line, in 60 seconds. So the, don't start yet, this is like your SATs, no cheating. All right? Is everybody clear on the instructions? No or yes? No. No. Okay, so here's what we're doing. 1 to 2, 2 to 3. You got to connect those. Find the 1. Then find the 2. You got to connect them with straight lines as high as you can go. So if you can get to 25 or 28, that's what you would do. Okay? Yes?
Can you cross lines?
Yes, as long as they're straight. You just can't make circles and say, oh, I connected all of them. Okay? Are you competitive? Are people here competitive?
Come on.
Raise your hands if you're competitive. Okay. How many people here are in sales? How many people are here in marketing? How many people here love to compete? Sports, other endeavors, yes? Okay, let's see. Ready, set, go. Remember, you're trying to get as high as you can. 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. I think we're going to post the results on the on Twitter, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Top 3? Yep. Everybody's going to go up. I'm only going to put up 3. $30 seconds. 20. Boy, I see some people really high. Some people really low. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pencils down. Time. Fabulous. Okay, show of hands. Keep your hands up. How many got to at least 10? Keep your hands up if you got to 15. 20. 25. 30. 31.
To be fair, I've done this with you before.
So how high did you get?
34.
How high did you get, Jen?
30.
30. First time, right? All right. Any observations? A couple of observations. Who wants to share them? Yes.
She was looking at her page.
So, as the great wrestler, I think Ken the Strongman said, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Great effort, right? What else?
I noticed as you started calling out times, how much time we had left, I was getting frantic, that I was getting in my own way.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of panic, yep. One more comment, something over here. Yes?
Not that I got high numbers or anything, but I felt that if I hold my hand like this, I could see the whole bird's eye view and see where the numbers were covering anything like that.
Good. All right, so I have unbelievable prizes here. So I have a scratch ticket for the second time around. This could be worth $100,000, I guess. So let's flip it over. Now you know. Oh, by the way, question before you start. So let's not start yet. You said that you were competitive and that you like to compete. So let me ask it this way. When we work with athletes, especially athletes, we ask this question. We say, how many of you love to win? And when I say love to win, I mean it energizes you. It's like putting fuel into your engine. When you win, you want to win more. You actually perform better. You get on a roll. How many of those? Okay, great. Over here, on the other side, we ask, how many of you hate losing? You can't sleep. It bothers you. It doesn't destroy you. It actually fuels you to actually do something differently, practice harder to figure out a way to win. How many of you hate to lose? Okay, well, let's see it. Ready, set, go. Did anybody see the game last night, the Stanley Cup? Pittsburgh and San Jose. I think Pittsburgh won. I don't know if Tom Brady's going to get suspended, but that's awful. It's really terrible. What do we got here? Somebody's already at 15. That's impressive. No swearing. I heard something under somebody's breath. Hmm. 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time. All right, awesome. How many of you, show of hands, improved? Nice, hands down. How many of you went the other way? Thank you for your honesty. How many of you stayed the same? 30 again. All right. Observations the second time around. Yes?
I couldn't pick out more than 4 ahead at a time.
So your limit was 4?
Yeah.
Good. Yes?
The toner on 21 on the first one is much lighter.
Very good. So I have 2 tickets. This is the ticket for giggles. This is good.
Do I have to split this with you?
No, but you should split it with your table. Another observation. What else? Yes?
Did you give us more time?
Nope. I did not. 1 minute, 1 minute. Yes?
The first round I ended at 22, and so right when it ended, I was like, where's 23? So the second time I knew when I got to 23, I'd know exactly where it was.
Good.
And I was excited to get there and be able to.
So you were able to go further?
Yeah.
Good. Yes?
So I kind of changed my strategy where I started to connect dots that were ahead of where I left off, just so I didn't have to remember where they were.
Yeah. So did you improve?
Yeah, went out 8 points.
Excellent. Yes,
I blocked you out.
you blocked me out. How many of you were listening to me? How many of you were worrying about someone else and what they were doing? How does this relate to sales?
It's a mind game.
Why is it a mind game, Joe?
It's a mind game because you are your own worst enemy. You could fake yourself out, or you could be your own champion.
Yep.
It's how you set yourself up for failure or success.
Good.
I bet you got that from being a manager, that you got a lot of reps that are always worrying about what other people are doing all the time. Worry about what you're doing yourself, right?
That's part of it.
That's a big part of it. And you were showing that there's many distractions out there. You're talking about the games. You know, everyone's at their desk, maybe thinking about what the games. Think about your damn sale.
Yeah. Control what you can control.
Right.
How about, yes?
Repetition, repetition, repetition.
Repetition, repetition, repetition. We're going to expand on that. Yes?
I did worse the second time because I didn't care as much.
You didn't care as much. What turned you off?
It was interesting the first time, wasn't interesting the second time.
Good. Thank you for the honesty. Yes?
I didn't actually study it, but I don't know, are they the exact same sheet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it could have been a little bit different.
Nope.
Like,
So here's what I saw. First time, kind of fun. Second time, we talked about love to win, hate to lose. Competitive juices a little bit. Already have a number in your head and you want to beat it. So shoulders went up, a little more tense, a little more focus. I could hear the pens going through the sheet this time a little louder, and white knuckles. If you're in sales, if you're in sports, if you perform for a living, tension kills. Tension is not your friend. Tension creates something that they call the narrowing of options. Threat rigidity is the fancy term, and your brain does this. You can process, digest, and organize information when everything's good. As tension comes, stress comes, it goes like this. And you hear about it when they talk about athletes choking under pressure. You've felt it if you've been nervous, you almost like lose your peripheral vision. That's a sensation that happens when you're pushing too hard. So the question I have for you is take your sheet, if you would, now like this, and fold it in half, and then open it up and tell me what you see. A Christmas tree. Say, Shane?
It's all left and right there.
So the numbers are what? One side is what? Odds and one side are evens. Okay, so my question to you is, in sales, you work in a pipeline, you have managers asking for your forecast, or you're a manager, and you're doing the same thing harder and faster, but the same thing. Because tension goes up and now you're not problem solving and thinking about it differently. Knowing what you know now, that odds and evens are opposite of each other, how much more efficient would you be? Right? That applies to sales. The mind leads the body, not the other way around. So when we're in a classroom setting like this or something casual, we have a couple of drinks, it all makes sense, and then we go back to work tomorrow and you walk in and the first thing your manager says is, how you doing this month? Where's your quarter, where's your forecast, right? Okay, so, anybody get 35? You don't count. 32?
But I could still win, just not win prize.
31? 30. Nobody got as high as 30. Just Jen? All right, round of applause for Jen.
That was a really amazing exercise. And we talk a lot about sport. So, what was it about sports, given your background? Maybe just share a little bit about what your background is from a sports perspective, but what was it about being an athlete that may have potentially informed you about sales? Maybe not necessarily early on, but some of the things that you started to think about afterwards. This all makes sense. There's some similarities there.
Yeah, I think with sports, when you talk to athletes, and I've had a chance to work with some professionals and Olympic level athletes, they might have this persona on the outside, but internally they're really humble because they know how quickly it can change. And there's almost a little bit of a, it's not paranoia, but there's this really delicate balance of confidence and then losing their confidence and how that impacts. So we've all been there where things are going well, you're above your number, you're performing well, you have all these thoughts that are advantageous. Give me another deal, what else can I have? Where's the boss? I want to talk to the boss. We have a company meeting, I can't wait to get there. And when it goes below that line, it's like you're here, you don't want to make another call, you don't want to have to present, maybe the company meeting's not such a good idea, or am I going to get fired, or what's the recruiter's number, right? In sports, it happens faster, right? There's games, there's coaching, it's tape, and you do it again and again. And practice is built around evaluation. And so sports has the ups and downs and the camaraderie that you love, but what I took from it was it's kind of an honest thing. It's what you put into it, you can get an awful lot out. And when you cheat it, it knows. And when I got into sales, when we think about sales, you've got your product or your service that you need to understand to be credible. You've got the audience that you're selling to, right? Whether it's the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, the CIO, you need to understand how they speak, think, and buy your product or service. Then you have a company that you work with, and they make sales tools, whether it's an ROI, a case study, an analyst, a subject matter expert, that you need to be able to leverage at the right time to that audience. And then selling methodology, some sales process that you use that makes you more efficient. Not that you can report up, but actually helps you. And then the fifth element is the mental game. And so that to me made so much sense in the sports world because you work on your fundamentals. If you're fans of Tom Brady or Serena Williams or Roger Federer, you name the athlete, when they get interviewed, they talk about their confidence level and they talk very specifically of how they get their confidence back, and it's their fundamentals. They always go back to their fundamentals and then expand from there. So getting into this, that made sense to me, and that's why I pursued a degree in psychology versus an MBA.
Interesting. And so talk to us about that idea of fundamentals, right? Because in sports it seems to make sense. You know, if you're a runner, you practice running.
Yes.
If you're a swimmer, you practice swimming. If you're at some sort of skill level in football, you practice that skill. What does it mean to actually practice skills from a sales standpoint? What are those fundamentals that you talk about?
Yeah, so I do a lot of sales coaching, just one-on-one coaching, and people come to me and they're usually not flourishing. And they say, I'm not having good conversations, my activity's down, the territory's lousy, the product doesn't work. And when we get past that, almost 95% of the time, it's a mental thing. And that mental thing has been an eroding of confidence. And then when you have an erosion of confidence, you start finding reasons not to do things. And that can be people that have been in the business 15, 20, 30 years. They've just lost that edge. And so when you talk about fundamentals, what I don't do is I don't put people, everybody needs to do this, because what you realize is that people are on different arcs. They learn differently, and then they hit acceleration at different points. And what I mean by that is, depending on if you're in technology, if you're in services, there's different things that matter more. So, for example, when I do this at the big Fortune companies, banks, companies that you hear about on their earnings, Fortune 10, Fortune 50, and we go through an exercise and we say, okay, product, service, how well do you understand it? Rate yourself. Situational fluency, that audience that you sell to, how effective are you? Rate yourself, 1 to 5, 1 to 5. Tools, how well do you leverage those sales tools in process? And then attitude, rank them. And most will say, I'm pretty good in product, or I'm pretty good in the situational fluency. Tools and sales process, very seldom. And then they'll give themselves a pretty high mark for attitude until we really get into it. And we expose some things. And the thing about attitude, or the mindset, is if you think about that, you're having 65,000 thoughts a day. You're a computer. And if those thoughts aren't on your side, you're undermining your ability to perform at your best.
65,000.
65,000. You are having this internal conversation 24/7. I'll go out on a limb. Some people are probably sitting there saying, who's the bald guy? I thought he looked different in the picture. You know, I mean, but you're having all these quick thoughts, and it's called your explanatory style. It's the manner in which you explain life's events to yourself. It's not what you say out loud, it's this internal conversation. And that dictates what you do. How you speak to yourself creates emotions, and your emotions drive your behavior. And so when we go through that ranking, most sales professionals will say situational fluency, understanding the CMO or the CIO or the CFO, and being credible with them, and my attitude are the two biggest things. And when we ask, what do you think they want you to understand their business, and they want someone who can problem solve. Hence, we're back to the numbers game, right? Sales, as we all know, is pretty complex these days. I think it's extremely difficult. So your ability to navigate, problem solve, compartmentalize, is as much the battle as it is mastering some of these fundamentals and how well you articulate help in other resources outside of your specific area, because you've got to get people in on the sale. So
it's interesting. I guess I'm kind of narrowing in on that whole 65,000 thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like there's a lot of things going on in your mind that you're not really aware of. You know, how much of that is really what we call more optimistic viewpoints versus the negative?
I laugh because of this. There is unbelievable research out there out of the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Martin Seligman. He is the probably top 10 psychologist in the world. And he's the leader of the research behind optimism and pessimism. And what he's discovered is this explanatory style. This explanatory style has been around a while, but never actually put to use on how do we improve performance. Psychology was how do we help people who aren't doing so well? How do we help the gifted flourish? And how do we help the everyday person? Well, the folks that were sick or coming back from the wars, that's where all the research went. And Seligman grabbed these other two pillars and ran with them. And this optimism versus pessimism is how you interpret events, big events, right? So for some folks who might have a pessimistic lens, we did this, and let's say that Jen got 30, and the average, they were looking around, and the average was 18 or 20, but they got 10. A pessimistic style would be, I never do well, I always come in last place. Think of Eeyore, right? You have kids. And the reason why that's important is because always and never is your ability to bounce back. How long it takes you to get back on task. Bad phone call, bad meeting with your boss, be honest, how long does it take you to get back on track? I have a lot of people that I've been in the office and someone says, I want to see you at 3 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, they're done. They do nothing until 3 o'clock, right? We're human. Always and never. That's one. The second one is spatial control. So take that same scenario, and now we're going to do it a second time. Are you going to connect a negative event to a future event? This is where the great athletes that you watch play. If you're a Red Sox fan, if you're a Tom Brady fan, he's phenomenal at this. He might be the best I've ever seen. Tiger Woods used to be great at this. They have a bad shot, a bad play, that is all it is. And then the next event is a new event. Spatial control, okay? And then the third is personalization. So that pessimistic lens then not only says, did I not do well, then they say, I'm lousy at my job, I'm not smart, I'm a bad person. Those are very heavy. And so you can have a tendency, based on these thoughts and how you interpret, that you start leaning to these three lenses of pessimism. On the optimistic side, you have kind of the antithesis of each one of those. So folks that are always and never might take 2 hours to bounce back. Someone who's optimistic in that lens says, yeah, I was in last place, so I got to figure out a way to get better. The spatial control. Bad event, yep. Good event, the pessimist says, I got lucky, it's not going to happen again. The optimist says, I started out great, get me on the phone again. I can't wait for the next inning. I can't wait for the next meeting. They get on a roll. And then the third is they don't personalize. They absolutely look at it as a temporary setback, and that is all it is.
It's like that they separate out. They don't feel that the result is necessarily something that they own or hangs over them.
The best performers I've been around, and so you know, we talked earlier about, I got to play at a pretty high level in college, and I got to play with a couple of players that went on to make a great living. A couple actually made it to the highest levels of the Hall of Fame in their particular sport. And now that I look back, I watched how they handled things that I didn't handle well. And they never, ever let it eat them up. They were incredibly skilled, but they had this durability over time, through practice, through the games, through the feedback from the coach, which usually wasn't very nice. They were able to maintain their focus on what they were doing, versus the rest of us were reading, reacting, getting upset. Yeah.
So I'm going to say that probably the default state for a lot of people is to be more on the emotional side and to let these things affect them.
Yes.
So what are some practical ways? I mean, a lot of sales folks here probably might be in a rut.
Yep.
You know, like try to be pulling out, thinking like, oh man, if I don't like pull out soon, I'm going to be on a performance improvement plan, and like, I'm on the line. What do I do? So how do you pull yourself out of that?
Yeah. So there's I'm going to say two things: action, versus this is gonna happen. What are you doing right now to change the outcome? Ask yourself that question. There's three filters to use. The first is, what are the facts? When you ask for the facts, and you do this as a friend, a family member, as a coach, how many of you here have kids? Okay, how many of you coached, right? Friends are fighting and you're the third party. What's the first thing that you do? Whoa, what happened? Timmy thinks I'm dumb. Did Timmy actually say you're dumb? No, he just won't let me join the group. That's not true. What are the facts? When you get to the facts, 50% of the time, people cannot substantiate their position. So you run through the facts. The second filter is what can you control and what can't you control. This is the action part. Of what you can control, right, you rank them by most impactful. And then what action specifically you're going to do and by when. What you can't control is the emotional noise. That's the stuff that takes you down. That's worrying about everyone else. That's projecting. That you can't change that. And then the third is perspective. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. So let me run through an example of how we did this. So at one time I was a sales leader, and one of my top salespeople handling a global account, one of the big enterprise accounts, came in and quote said, "We're going to lose X, Y, and Z company." Now, X, Y, and Z company in our particular area represented about 15% of the revenue, so you can imagine it got my attention. And I said, what do you mean we're going to lose X, Y, and Z company? And she said, "I just got off the phone, screaming and yelling. We were late on the delivery. It's not what they asked for, and they're very upset." Okay, did they say they're going to fire us? No. Let's go back again with what they said. What was late? What didn't we do well? Okay. What do we need to do over here and what we can control? Who needs to be part of this? We made the list. We made the calls. We got the right players involved. What couldn't we control? Right? Well, kind of where we were at this point, they've already reacted. We can't control what happened in the past, and we're not going to project their decision. But what we can control is how we react. And then the perspective. So when we get on the phone, listened to them and laid out our plan, and then delivered on it, they loved us. But that's a quick, and I have a post out there. Last year I had a heart attack, and that pretty much puts you to the test around this whole filter thing. Is you're in the ambulance and they're giving you the aspirin and all that stuff, and they're showing you the EKG. And I write about what I did, because I could feel that I could go this way or I could go this way. And so I started running through, okay, what happened? I had a heart attack, he showed me the EKG, I got the aspirin, the other stuff that they spray under your tongue, I can't even think of it right now. I can ask questions, I can answer the questions. What can I control? Not what hospital I'm going to, what the severity of my heart attack, what they're going to say when I get there. Okay, filters. I get good med, I have good doctors, bang, bang, bang. And I ran through that, guys. And I kept it with me from the time they came to my house, from the time they delivered me into the emergency room, and there was a team of people poking me and all that, and then I went to the cath lab. I used those filters. So, in work and other things, these really work. And when you hear about sports psychologists working with athletes, this is the stuff that they get paid a lot of money on. Because athletes who make a lot of money or trying to get to the next level, or type A personalities that hate to win, hate to lose, love to win people, are extremely intense. And so you've got to find a way to remove the emotional piece of it and get them talking and listing what's going on, because you slow your brain down when you do that. You have to write the bullets down. And it's all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's in black and white. And then you look at it and you're like, oh. It's like when you forget the dry cleaning. It's the 10th thing that went wrong that day, and someone doesn't put their blinker on, and you turn into a mad person, right? What the It's not the dry cleaning. It's everything else you've been carrying around, and that was the trigger point. If you're in professional sales, that dry cleaning is waiting to go off 24/7, right?
You made a particularly good point. Writing it down.
Yes.
Making it real as opposed to this thing that floats around in your mind. The other thing that actually really strikes me is that when you're going through that example of your sales rep opening this account, that's really good perspective because you can coach. I think there's some folks out there that probably think about this perspective. I can do that for myself. But what about like for folks that have to coach an entire team or manage a team? How do you get them to maybe not be so reactive? And what are the things that make a manager maybe a better coach?
Yeah. So what I find is the biggest challenge is when it's you, right? Because it's your emotions. So you've got to master this first. When you become a manager, this thing I talk about when people get emotional, there's thinking traps. You know, the constricting, and people they jump to conclusions. There's emotional reasoning, magnifying the negative, minimizing the positive, mind reading. There's 8 of them. And once they kind of become familiar, they can know, oh, that's what Mark does, that's what Mike does. And then as a manager, when you have meetings when you're addressing someone and they're like, this isn't fair, okay, lay out the facts of the situation for me. Go ahead. And give them the opportunity to do that. And when they do that, it becomes part of the culture. So one of the great benefits I had is I got to play for a coach at one time who was a master of this. And he would sit you down, or get a group of us, a whole line with whatever team, and he would say, okay, what are the issues? Tell me what's going on. And we were like, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, let me show you the video. It's not what I say. Now tell me what you see. Okay, what are you going to do about it? Because the consequences are you aren't playing. It's one game. It's 2. And at 17, 18-year-old, 20-year-old kids, it works. I've seen it work with adults. That is like magic dust, those 3 filters. Facts, what you can control, what you can't control, and perspective. If you use that, you will have people so quickly back on task in asking for help on specific things, not stuff that will move the business.
I want to open this up to questions, which is actually perfect timing, Mr. Donovan.
Because we're so simpatico. Great talk. Thank you so much. You mentioned a topic earlier, which I'd love to expand on, and it's something I've worked on a lot in my life, is the area of how anxiety and tension and mental stress, right, really just destroy performance and motivation. And I got a lot out of learning something about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
So the question, just how to handle anxiety and stress, maybe some practical advice on that.
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to that. Part of it's preparation, especially in your particular endeavors, that you are going to have pressure and you're going to have anxiety. It is going to come. So part of that is when you think about what causes it, right, it's different for everybody. You got to figure out what causes you to kind of become, what's the word I want, lots of tension, or to start developing anxiety. And that really comes from how you interpret a situation again. There's the kind of cognitive piece, and then the physical piece is the hands sweat, your breathing changes, you perspire where you don't want to perspire, and you can't control your voice. That's kind of the reaction of the anxiety and the pressure. And again, this gets back to, ask yourself this question: what is triggering this? Why am I getting nervous? I've been doing speaking, guys, for years, and big audiences. I don't know, sometimes, and I'm prepped, sometimes I'm getting nervous before I go out. And I'm like, I just did 2 in Vegas and I killed it. Now I'm standing there in Orlando and I'm like, God, I can't catch my breath. I'm like on needles and I'm thinking, okay, what's causing this? And usually it's something like, I don't really know this company well enough. Well, you kind of do. You did the prep. You haven't spoken to them before. Okay. Subject matter I know inside and out. I don't even need the slides. I'm good to go. Let me get just a good start. And I'd always prep for the first 30 seconds. But I still get, not nervous, I'm talking about like I'm trying to control my breathing. So the last piece on this is when it hits, you slow your breathing down. It's this. To 5. To 5. 5 reps. The second thing you do, you carry tension in your hands, you squeeze hard, hold, 5, let go. And you do that 3 times. And this will get some of the tension out of your body, but the breathing is the quickest way to really slow yourself down and start asking, okay, what is it that I'm nervous about? People are like, my boss is in the room. Yeah. If you're working in a company, you should assume that's going to happen no matter what. You might not be at that meeting, but they're going to walk in. And you're in sales, you're being evaluated because you cost a lot of money. What can you control? How well you prep, how well you know your stuff, do you ask questions, are you coachable? Are you coachable?
That's a big one.
That's huge. Can I just expand on this?
Please.
So, the number one issue I see with top performers and athletes that don't get to their potential, you hear about that all the time, their potential, is because they're not coachable. And what I mean by that is this. At Stanford University, they've done some unbelievable research. The psychologist, her name is Dr. Carol Dweck. She has a book out there called Mindset. It's really good. And but what she's kind of said is, look, I've watched, researched, looked at a lot of people, and I see kind of 2 main buckets. There's the folks that have a fixed mindset. And a fixed mindset means this. I'm pretty good at what I do. Ego is attached to how other people perceive my mastery of what I do. My abilities are kind of innate. It is what it is. I'm not going to really get better. I'm pretty good, but that's kind of it. And they also correlate effort with a lack of mastery. So if it's too hard, that means I'm really not good at it versus, my God, you really worked hard to do that. And so these folks are good at certain times, but they can't evolve. They don't grow, right? Senior salespeople have this a lot when I see them. They're not coachable. They're like, I'm not exposing myself. I've been doing this. Meanwhile, sales is changing every 2 minutes. And if you're not staying with it, in trying and evolving, you're going to make less money and not have your job. Fixed mindset. Growth mindset is this. Not only do I believe in my abilities, much more important, I believe I can get better. And because I believe I can get better, that's kind of my passion, my drive. That blueprint that I'm looking for is what's the one thing that's going to move the needle? Who do you admire as a performer? Somebody give me a name. Athlete, performer, actor, just
Tom Brady.
Adele, Tom Brady,
Steve Vai.
Steve Vai, great guitarist, right?
Absolutely.
Ellen DeGeneres.
Ellen DeGeneres,
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers. Where do you think these folks fall on the growth versus the fixed mindset?
Growth.
These are the growth mindset. Think about Ellen DeGeneres. Started up as a stand-up comedian. Now she's become this major, major TV person and a movie star, right?
We're all trying to get better.
They're always trying to get better. What else can I add to my repertoire? And so part of the journey is mistakes. They're not worried about the potholes. There was a quote about Tom Brady from his college coach, and he said, football is this awful, awful endeavor. It's painful. It's painful. Who would want to do this? And he said, no one loved it in all my years of coaching college than Tom Brady. He embraced the hard stuff. He liked it. Well, he's just gotten better every year. And at 39 or whatever he is, he's still trying to figure out what's the next thing. Where most are like, I'm done. I'm good. That is a huge separator on folks. This isn't physical. This is all about how you look at things. The mind leads the body. And so when you kind of think about, be honest with yourself. Am I really open to this stuff? Am I really trying to get better? Or am I just kind of going through the motions? And what I find when we kind of peel the onion back is the majority of people that I work with are going through the motions. They're kind of trying. You're not all in. And so when I ask, how many of you are competitive? And usually what I kind of find out is you're not that competitive. You think you're competitive, but you're not on the world-class level. And the example I'll give you is I had an Olympian come to one of our talks like this. We had 20 sales leaders. Pretty intense organization, kind of a mercenary organization. We went through this exercise and we asked them, we had plenty of time, so we said, if you're a hate to lose, tell me what that means. And everybody did that. Love to win, okay. And everyone kind of said what they thought they should say. So then we asked this person. Jaws dropped, you could hear a pin drop for 5 minutes. Because he talked about it in a way that was so, like people were like, oh my God, you're crazy. Like who makes people like this? Is how he talked about how much he hated to lose. And they were like, I didn't know that people were that's crazy competitive. I'm like, no, that's the separation piece. And so when you get out there and you're competing, I guarantee your competition is going through the motions. So if you want to move the needle, get a plan, work on it, commit to it, and move the needle, and you'll gain an edge, and you'll gain another edge. But it's got to be the growth mindset. So you got to go get help, you got to be coachable, and you got to find other ways.
Coachable is huge. Question in the back?
So, coaching to strengths versus coaching to weaknesses. There's one school of thought that you want to focus on someone's strengths so that they're focusing on the positive, and then there's another school of thought where you want to not necessarily focus on the weaknesses, but kind of like Superman, you want to make sure that that's not going to be something that weakens you later on because you're not expecting it. Do you have a particular stance on that? Is there a combination of it? And then how do you apply that to coaching millennials who, from my experience in having 2 millennials myself, really hate to fail? Like if they think they're going to fail at it, they're not going to even try.
Yeah, so let me take the first. Great question. So strengths versus weaknesses. I always come back to that decision point on, first, specifically what you do, your environment, what will move the needle, and what do you need. People, when you think about these athletes, what I love, when I work with college coaches, here's what they do. They show you their book, and their book is their recruiting for the next 5 years. They show you what style of play they want, and then they show you their individuals and each one of theirs plan. That's how, and they lay out practice for that. So if you think about, well, what's going to move the needle? If you get better at this and you go from a 7 to a 15, you're good, but you're going to be great. Will that carry you in this endeavor? Right? Keep it simple. Be really good. If it's a different type of thing, then you've got to look at it as, hey, this weakness is so glaring, it's going to undermine you. But the thing that you have to do once you evaluate is you've got to prioritize. It's got to be one thing. Not 4, not 3, not 2. One.
Good point.
Right?
It's like, there was one time I had a golf coach, and every time I go, my head would be spinning at the end.
Yeah.
Like end of the hour, and I'd go out onto the golf course and play around. I was all over the place. Until one time, I finally found a golf coach. He said, and it was almost like this Mr. Miyagi type style, where I just had to do one thing the entire session.
Yeah.
And, we've got to fix your balance, your swing. Just focus on that.
Yeah.
It's just one exercise, and you need to get the muscle motion, but also the mental motion in your mind set before you move on. They didn't actually tell me that ahead of time, but over time, I started to get incrementally better.
Yeah, isolate and simplify, if you can remember that phrase. Isolate and simplify, because if the mind is clouded, the body will be disoriented, there's doubt. When you're clear on something, you get to A to B pretty quickly. When you know, when you're like, this is what I'm going to do, you get really fast, really good, really efficient. If you're coaching and you're trying to figure out how to move the needle, you've got to isolate what matters, simplify it to its simplest form, and then act on it. And that's all you're going to work on. And then once you get that moved, now you can incorporate a new area of focus. So many people, and all of us, if you're providing training, if you're receiving training, I don't do full days. It's a waste of time. It's not fair to the people, right? I try to work in 2-hour increments, and I have breaks, and we just go on one thing. Then we go to one more thing, and then I kind of make a judgment on when we're going to get together again. That's it. Just think about how much stuff you have going on. One thing that will move the needle, and pick it, and drive it.
Just a real simple question, I guess. So just around goal setting and how that helps mentally in sales, how it helped you how it helped you perform?
Yeah. I actually wrote my thesis on this. Goal setting and feedback. There's tons and tons of research about the power of goal setting with feedback, so the measurement. What I see the fall down in goal setting is goals, you hear, they have to be specific, they have to be measurable, they have to be difficult but attainable. But part of that is,
smart goals.
yeah, but part of that, where the big miss is that you have to have incremental measure points to that goal. So what I mean by that is, you know, I've been on a bunch of diets, and if you say, I want to lose 20 pounds, that's your goal. Okay, but how's that going to work backwards? Is it 1 pound a week? Is it 2 pounds, right, a month? That's the magic dust in goal setting, and that's also for sales folks. Think about it. When we get into this tension of projecting, and they have a quota, that quota looks huge when they're not coming close to it. If you work back from for someone in sales and say, all right, there's a quota, what's the average trade? Break it down for them so they can digest. I need X amount of deals, or I need this kind of activity to get to that, and how do I know I'm on track? So goal setting is really important, but it's got to be done properly, and it's got to be something that's talked about constantly. Not like, oh, it's 3 weeks, let's talk about your goals. It's like, how are we doing?
Yeah, it's a perfect example. I mean, I started training for this marathon, which I was telling you about. And,
yes.
Yeah, so you think like 26.2 miles, I mean, it's daunting because I've never run more than 10 miles, and that was just once in my life. And so, yeah, it was great. I got this book, thanks Lisa, but it broke it down. Like, okay, this is how many miles you do every week. This is what you do on a daily basis, 4 days a week. And so it just laid it out in ways that seemed attainable, and it wasn't one big jump. And I think the same thing in sales. We get caught up in just the big, huge quota.
Yeah.
You know, and at a place like Sadeghpour and Oracle, we had multi-millions of dollars of quotas that we were carrying, and that was really daunting. So how did I break it down? And thinking, okay, well, these are the things I think pull in, just start working towards that and building up until I had a good enough pipeline that it can sustain. I can feel confident about achieving the goal, as opposed to worrying at Q4 what's going to come in.
Right, which is a terrible feeling we've all been in, right?
Some more questions? Hey, in the back.
Mike, when you're coaching a group,
yes.
Is there anything that you do to get the state of everyone at kind of at the same place? So, because a lot of times people will come in, they had a bad night the night before, other people are bouncing off the walls. How do you kind of get to that lowest common denominator where it's a place that you can start building on?
I ask a couple of questions. So, I'll ask a question like, okay, red, green, yellow. Green, awesome, things are going great. How many are at the yellow stage? Could go either way. How many kind of red, like, yeah, it's not good right now. All right, it's a good quick touch. Okay, green, why? Let's hear it. Yellows, why? Let's hear it. Reds, why? Keep it clean, right? Then we go, all right, so based on that, this is what we've signed up for. If I start here, does this make sense to everyone? Because this is what we're going to drive for the next hour. And people will tell me, no, that doesn't work for me. Or, yeah, that's right on. And then you go, as a trainer, as a coach, as a speaker, don't assume. Like I did this thing, I was at IBM, right? And I was midweek in one of their big, sales weeks where there were meetings that would get PowerPoint, product training, the whole thing. And I called the person that hired me and I said, I'm doing 1 o'clock Wednesday after lunch. I am not doing PowerPoint. There's no way. I said, but please check with a couple of your leaders and see if that's okay. And she did. And so when she introduced me, the last thing she said was, and Mike's not using PowerPoint, I got a standing ovation for Mike, right? And because I was just, put yourself in someone else's shoes. I can talk about this stuff, guys. I'm not talking about being perfect. I've covered the spectrum of screwing up. And I tell people all the time, if I'd known this when I was an athlete, I would have gotten to another level. I was my own worst athlete. I undermined myself in business. I've done it all. And so when you're working with folks, ask them how they're doing and get a pulse. And then have people kind of connect with, what do you want to get done and why? Why do you want to get that done? because they're carrying around quota, they're carrying around pipeline, they're carrying around forecast, and they're carrying around their W-2. That's what they're thinking about 24/7. And if it's not going well, they're not going to hear a lot of what you're doing. That make sense?
Yep, thank you.
John.
Yes, thank you. Just to follow up on the previous point, do you think that there'd be an advantage if management didn't focus on the quota that their salespeople had to meet and just focus on the coaching and helping them just become better relationship managers or salespeople and just I mean, obviously we're in business, we need to make numbers.
Yeah.
However, you know, would it be better if management just kept that to themselves and just help people get to where they need to go and see if they're a good fit or not?
I would absolutely sign up for that. And when I'm allowed to speak to non-sales executives, I talk about that a lot. And here's what I mean by it. If the number, people are smart, they know they have to have a number, just like you said. However, when you're asking people where they are with their deal over and over again, where they are against quota, it becomes very myopic. And if we get back to how do you get better at what you do, when you hear athletes, if you want to read a book that's really good, it's Dr. Bob Rotello's called How Champions Think. He's worked with some of the most famous, LeBron James to Michael Jordan, you name it. And it's about the task at hand, it's not the outcome, right? If you can focus on the task at hand, that's how you coach. And coaching is the thing that gets, I would say, ignored the most in sales management because of all the meetings and all that. I am telling you, if you could ever get a commitment to spend 70% of your time coaching, and if you know how to coach, you will blow the numbers out. It's inverse right now because of the analytics, the CRM. There's too much reporting and inspecting. There's not enough coaching. And I think that's the downfall to a lot of sales organizations. And I was chatting with Marie? Yes. With Marie, and we were talking about, you know, there's some number out there, less than 50% of the reps are making the number. It's not, look, we could all get better, but there's something very broken here. And so I would absolutely say that there's not enough coaching going on. Good coaching.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, some of the statistics I've gone through, the organizations that are considered, say, best in class are best in class because they at least provide, you know, X amount of hours per month in coaching. You know what that number is?
No.
3. 3 hours per month to actually make a significant difference in sales performance. So just think about that minimal amount of effort. They can at least move the needle significantly in terms of sales performance.
So you mentioned earlier positive mindset versus negative mindset and how you talk to yourself and the impact on that. So if you kind of speak to methods for affecting your own mindset and driving yourself towards positive versus negative thinking.
Yeah, so let me
just, I got to share one thing because as I've been doing all this running, so in this book that I've been reading, which is really good, it talks a lot about the mental game, you know. And the thing that has actually worked for me is actually visualization. Just having mental pictures of winning or success or crossing a finish line. Like I don't know. I mean that took me from a place where I'm trying to run a long distance, and instead of thinking about God, it sucked, painful, I'm not gonna be able to make it, I have this like mental this movie that's running in my mind, and it changes everything. It's been like just amazing, just like a mental trick, just to get outside of your situation. And the same actually works well in any sort of stressful situation.
Yeah, so the subconscious, you can start painting pictures. If you have a chance, it's called P59. 2 Swedish mental coaches that coach women's golf. 59 is birding every hole, 18 holes. That's how they coach. That's a positive mindset, right? And one of their students is Annika Sonnenström, who's a Hall of Famer and one of the greatest players in the last 30 years on the women's tour. And she used to be pretty negative until she started working with Pia Nielsen. And the visualization piece is, when he says visualization, it's actually closing your eyes in 2 ways. One, seeing it as an observer, like you're in the stands watching you, and then seeing it through your eyes as you're the performer and you're seeing the field or whatever you're doing. Actually spending, you know, the breathing I was talking about, slowing your breathing down, and spending 15 minutes kind of visualizing, fantasizing about success. What does that look like to you? Because that's a direction, and it's a picture of positivity. And so when the body changes to positive from negative, the enzymes change, your body mix change, that's a good thing, right? That's one way. The second is there's a book called Authentic Happiness by Dr. Martin Seligman, who can really go into detail. And it's really well written and an easy read to give you some techniques that go deeper into that about positive mindset versus negative mindset. So Authentic Happiness is a good book to pick up and take a peek at.
I'm going to take one last question. Anyone has some closing thoughts? Otherwise, you mentioned a bunch of books.
Yes.
So I think those are all great resources, and what I'll do at the end. What?
I have one last question.
Okay.
Could you talk about the topic of resilience a little bit?
Sure.
Thanks. I think it's such a key to
Good closing. Yeah, good closing question.
So resilience and optimism are first cousins. What I mean by that is this. Optimistic thinking fuels resilience. Okay? Pessimistic thinking undermines resilience. And so when you talk about resilience, when you feel stressed, when you have anxiety, usually it's because you don't feel like you have control. Things, your natural resources are being overwhelmed, they're asking for too much. And again, it gets back to your interpretation of the situation, right? It's about, okay, I am completely drained. And when you kind of go through the 3 levels of exhaustion, there's the first one, which is you have a confrontation with a coworker and you have the adrenaline attack. Ever been there? You get really mad, you're like, all the blood goes to your big limbs, your eyes dilate, and boom, you have that adrenaline attack. You're like, oh. 20 minutes later, the boss is asking you for the quota and what you're going to do, and it's not good, and they're like, that's ridiculous. Oh. Second phase. So you went from the natural, the way you built, to your resources, and then in the afternoon you have another one of those. But however, you've already used levels 1, 2, and now you're in number 3. Number 3 is the exhaustion stage, and what that is 2 plus 2 is 5. You cannot process information as clearly as you can in stages 1 and 2, which goes back to your resilience levels, right? So back to how do I then get out of the exhaustion stage? It gets back to very specific things and how you interpret them and whether or not you believe you can control them, right? And if you can control them, it gets back to what are you doing and why? How you interpret setbacks, where you're going and why. So the research, all this stuff I've talked about. So I've talked about a little bit about resilience, optimism, pessimism, visualization, sports psychology. The underlying platform is your inner voice. The manner in which you explain events to yourself triggers these different, they're all branches of research that have become specialized. But it's how you interpret and your perspective on things that drives everything else. That answer your question on resilience?
Yes.
Yes, it does. The shorthand I was given was 2 things. Be a pragmatic optimist, right? Not Pollyannish thinking. And the other part was to be a self-cleaning oven. To know, to like have the mindset that I can manage myself and to notice my state and to take those proactive steps. When you get caught up in it, you can just not see yourself. And so like the trigger for me is if I see myself getting into a state that's depleted, is to notice, hey, I'm tired, rest. You know, like actually manage and deal with what's actually going on. So you covered most of it anyway.
So the only thing I'll add to that is the optimism piece. If you would like to increase your sales performance by 30 to 80%, I would really check optimism out. Go online and just Google Metropolitan Life Insurance, Dr. Martin Seligman. Because he tested life insurance salesmen on the optimism scale. And it is blow your eyeballs out stuff. And what they looked at is the most optimistic people versus the most pessimistic people. This is first year, second year, third year, 4 year. Outperformed them, optimist versus the pessimist, by as high as 80%. And then as you got to more of the mean, it was an average of 30%. Better resilience, greater performance. Same test done at West Point with the plebes. The plebes that test high on the optimism level make it through West Point. And he's done it over and over and over again. Optimism is not everything's going to be wonderful. When you actually look at the real definition, it is this. I have a setback, I believe it's temporary, but I believe I can overcome it. So what do I need to do? i.e. entrepreneurs are off the charts. Yes?
I hate to prolong this any longer, but you just stepped into my world with that MetLife reference with life insurance.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because 80% of people who are licensed today to sell life insurance are going to be out of the business in 5 years before the next license renewal. And I find it very interesting that you say that optimists who are in this industry do so much better, but I can't tell you because my function is to fix all the things that the optimists have sold to all the clients that they didn't need. So the question I have for you is, there's a fine line between confidence, optimism, and prudence and realism. And that's something that me personally I'm conflicted with because it's a very, very fine line. But could you speak on that?
Yeah, so call it dynamic optimism versus pragmatic. Dynamic optimism is the energy, the drive to overcome, and to compartmentalize setbacks and to leverage success. So my argument back to that, if they're selling outside the box, is the guidelines. It's just freewheeling, right? You go outside of Metropolitan Life and talk to people that are in marketing or engineers in other companies, what's the #1 complaint? They're selling shit that we don't make. Cut it out. That's in every sales organization. If you just pull up, it's 3 pages, it's a summary. I mean, he's done it with Matt Biondi, one of the Olympic athletes from the Seoul Olympics who won 7 medals in his test score. I mean, I'll tell you, and I took the class with him, I was just like, you gotta be kidding me, this can't be real. It's pretty powerful. So it's worth exploring.
So following up on that, one last question, we'll wrap things up, but obviously there's some really inspiring folks that we've mentioned during this talk.
Yes.
What about for yourself? Is there anything that you've read or seen that's been recently inspiring for you?
Yeah. I just finished the Rotella book on how champions think. And what I love about Dr. Bob Rotella used to run the psychology sports department down at University of Virginia. And it's his way of just breaking things down into its, like we're having a beer. Not all the science and the fancy stuff, but just, he just says, look, you've got to have optimism, you have to have confidence, you have to have a work ethic, and you have to have a passion of what you're doing. And he said, those are the 4 things that I see with the athletes that I work with that are the most successful. And he said, there's doubt, I don't know how much, but those are the 4 things that he's tracked over the years. And it came back to those 4 things with all the different stories. It was so simple but powerful. So that's a really, for me, it was a really good read. Because most of the stuff I read are research papers, and I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah.
No, it's so true. In fact, I posted something on LinkedIn today. It said some of the best sales books I think I've ever read are not actually explicitly about sales. It's just that you're able to take the lessons out of those books and apply to what you do to be a better professional. So I thought this was amazing. Thanks, Mike, for coming. Here, just give a round of applause.